Can Reddit please work something out to reach Diane's daughter? A woman called Diane was murdered in 1995 and she keeps visiting me. I'm 51F, a reasonable person who knows how the imagination works. I've always seen odd things, but most often I hear them. Furthermore, I will be going on a road trip with a metal detector and a heavy ass magnet to find something in a ditch that the police failed to find. Diane knows she's dead and what happened. One night I was sitting on the back porch listening to the night when suddenly I heard branches breaking and leaves cracking as if someone was walking around the dense woods that line the back of the house. I'm not one to believe in Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever other kind of paranormal being walks the woods at night, but for the life of me I thought the sub might be of help. I can't really turn to anyone else because they would just label me insane or some kind of drug addict. The other night my husband and I started to hear this really weird sound like something was slowly falling in our room. So we flashed a flashlight in the general direction, and we couldn't find or see what it was. After a few minutes of this pulsating, everything started spinning in the corner on the wall where we pointed the flashlight and looked. It started making a vortex/portal that would not stop, so we had to sleep that night with a night light on narration. I'm a grub-up driver and I keep getting orders from an abandoned building. I just moved to a new city, I was away from home to start college. The sign was half burned out, just the letters *EATIF* flickered in red on the bag. The next night another order popped up, a weird code, freezer pickup, silent drop of $40, so that's half a week of groceries. Then I know I shouldn't, but I can't narration. I think he was a little guilty about the move because he got into a big fight with the leader, but he was a little better at adjusting to the new community. The next day, I asked my parents where they kept their flesh pond if they needed more flesh. His true name was Orion, but his new skinhead referred to himself as Brett, so we are not back home anymore, Becca. I'll see you at lunch if you want, Nero. Just the painting with a tree, a house, no boy and no shadow. The boy in the painting is missing, so it's one of those 1930s and 40s American lifestyle pieces, but like a Norman Rockwell or something similar. For a moment I excitedly explored the thought it might be one of his, but it's not nearly detailed enough to be a genuine Rockwell. But it does still have that iconic evocative storytelling. This one in particular shows a scene of a boy with his back to a tree. Not far behind the tree is the corner of a white wooden house, and beside the house a long shadow peeks around the corner. There's no title or author's name visible, and the people working at the antique store had no additional information to offer. But I interpreted it as the boy is hiding either because he did something wrong and is running from a parent, or maybe he's playing hide and seek. Either way, it's a fun little piece and I believe a real snapshot from the time. The problem is that now it's only a painting of a tree, a house, and a long shadow coming around a corner, then the boy has since disappeared. And not like he was cut out or had whiteout put on him. He's just no longer part of the scene anymore, like the artist had never painted him in the first place. Now when you look at the painting you can see the part of the tree and the grass that should have been obscured by the boy, so this was impossible. Then I felt insane. I ran over the options, and it seemed either someone came into my home and painted perfectly over the boy as to make him appear to have vanished, or I was misremembering the painting I had bought. But there was just no way for either option. Painting over him would be inconceivably difficult, and why would someone bother breaking into my home in order to play such a prank that would be near impossibly hard to complete on me? The second option seemed more possible, like some sort of one-person Mandela effect which does sort conflict with the meaning of the phrase altogether, but you understand. But then the painting I purchased makes no sense. There's no story, it's just a tree by a house and someone coming around the corner. While doubtful, I was willing to concede to that and possibly get myself an urgent appointment with a psychologist, when I remembered I had sent a friend a picture of my thrifting haul that day, and while the painting is small in the picture you can clearly see the boy. I desperately wanted to know more, then as it turned out, I wouldn't have to wait long. That evening I was trying to go about my day as normally as I could. I decided that I would do some baking. As a favourite pastime I figured it would help me relax a bit. I had seen a recipe for blueberry cheesecake cookies that had been sitting in my recipe list for a while now, and I decided this was a great opportunity. Furthermore, I went and got the ingredients from the supermarket and got quick to work. A thing that you should know is the house I live in is unfortunately creaky. It becomes dramatically unfortunate when you're already on the edge. And the light wind that night was enough to make soft creaks echo and whine from down the hole. I knew it must be the wind, but even so, every time I heard the droning creak, I froze in my steps and waited until it passed. My solution was to turn on some loud music. It was a situation we're hearing, and knowing more was not going to help me. After just a little longer I was able to finish up, and by the time I slid the cookie sheet into the oven my thoughts were free of any. As they baked I waited carefully nearby. I'm easily distractible, and if I leave the kitchen while something is cooking it will burn, listening to music, waiting for the buzzer. Strategically standing where the hallway wasn't in my peripheral vision. /*, I set the cookies on a cooling rack, then headed off to take a shower. I figured if I timed it right, I could finish my shower feeling refreshed, then have a sneaky cookie or two before going to bed. I was tuning the hot and cold water to be just right crash. Furthermore, I jumped up as a cacophony of clanking metal erupted from the kitchen. My heart raced, and my blood ran cold. The bathroom door was still open, and if I just peeked my head out and turned, I could see down the hall into the kitchen. It took many seconds before I could will myself to move. My ears, still ringing from the clanging metal, were focused on catching any other sounds. As if everything else was scared silent by the crash, nothing seemed to be making a noise. None of the creaking from the house, or the air conditioning, or movement of water in the pipes in the walls. I inched my way to the door and leaned my head out just far enough I could peer down the hall. I could only see a part of the kitchen, just enough to see a couple cookies on the floor. The portion of the kitchen I couldn't see must be where the cookie sheet had probably landed from whatever had made it fall. With careful, calculated movements, I stepped into the hall. Now I was being mindful of making the floor creak myself. Slowly, ever so slowly, I moved down the hall. When I reached the doorway into the kitchen, I took a moment to fortify myself before stepping in and looking around a corner. In the corner of the room, the cookie sheet was on the ground, having landed bottom side down. Some cookies had somehow managed to land back on top. Granted, that was only 3 of the dozen I had made, but at least I'd have something to eat for all that hard work. I lifted the sheet back up and found somewhere more stable to set it. Inspecting where on the counter it fell from, while unlikely, I was telling myself it must have just fell on its own. I must have put it closer to the edge than I had realized, or maybe I put it on something that made it uneven. Or sometimes I've seen how cookie sheets tend to buckle when they're heating up or cooling down. I told myself there were many explanations why this could have happened, and not just the one specific reason. As I was cleaning up the surrounding mess, gathered the cookies in the crook of my arm, who had unfortunately found their end on the floor. When I found them all, I made my way to the trash can, then stopped. I looked at my pile, then looked around again, then back to my pile, yet there were only 8 in my hands. There should have been 9, since I made a dozen and 3 survived. My head cocked up, and my eyes darted around the room, down the halls as far as I could see, and I still didn't see anything, so didn't hear anything either. I cautiously walked to the trash can, keeping my eyes up and alert. I stepped on the lever, and the normally quiet squeak of the lid opening felt painfully loud, yet I tossed the 8 cookies. Cautiously, I ate one of the ones that survived, waiting for my heart to settle. Once it was quiet, I was ready to take my shower and go to bed, though I thought I may lock my bedroom door for my own sense of security. I got into the shower, turning the water to be just a little hotter than I'd usually prefer, trying to let the sting distract me. As the steam flowed up and over my body up to my mouth where it filled my lungs, I began to feel calm again. Then a shiver started at my ankle and shot up my leg. Not a shiver of fear, but of cold, but I turned. The cloth and plastic shower curtains obscured my view, but briefly thought I saw a short dark silhouette. I jumped back, moving only slightly before crashing into the tiled wall and slipping to the ground. I landed hard on my butt, splashing the plastic side of the curtain, so I looked back up quickly. The water I splashed made it even more difficult to see, but as it trickled down I could no longer see the silhouette. I scooted over and with a shaking hand grabbed the curtain and pulled it slowly back, then no one else was in the bathroom. But the door wall was now cracked just slightly enough for cold air to blow, spinning the wisps of steam into spirals. Grabbing the towel off the rack, I stepped carefully out. My thought at the moment was if I could close the door I could be safe to take a moment to gather myself. I gently reached forward until my hand touched the wood of the door that was cold with light condensation. Ever so slowly I leaned until the door latch pushed against the frame, then fell into place with the // click // and in a flash I locked it again and let loose a breath that I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Quickly, I dried myself and got dressed in my pajamas. Since it's now fallen, socks are basically required to walk on my tile floors and the first thing you want to put on. As I was pulling up my pajama pants, I noticed something on my foot. I crouched down and realized there was something on my right sock. I could see it only slightly from here as it seemed to wrap around from the sole. I sat down on the edge of my tub and pulled up my foot to get a better look. An orange. It was a little mark of orange. It wasn't just orange, but a swirling mix of orange and a warm beige, a touch of terracotta red, and I didn't understand. They had been perfectly clean white socks. I hadn't seen that before. After a moment, a thought struck me and I went to the ground on my knees, so I scanned the towel, then there, so I leaned in closely and examined it. Exactly what I bearded it was, a droplet of water with oranges and browns swimming inside. A little bit of paint suspended in water, yet I looked further and there they were. Just a few more droplets of paint and water leading to the door, and I gathered my courage. I needed to know how much farther my trail went. I put my hand on the doorknob and slowly applied pressure until it matched the resistance the knob gave, and so incredibly slowly twisted until the latch was pulled back and I could crack the door open. Pressing my eye against the open slit of the door, I looked out into the hallway, so I couldn't see anything notable. I tried to search the ground for more drops, but from here it was impossible to see, but I decided on opening the door fully. I decided on a bandit approach and with as much speed as I thought I could do without making a noise. Furthermore, I glanced down the hall to check it was clear, then crouched back to the ground. With the aid of the light from the bathroom, I could see much easier and found another droplet just a few inches outside the door. From then, following the trail of them was no difficulty. Quickly, the amount of paint in each droplet seemed to diminish until there wasn't any left at all, but the water still beaded up noticeably on the tile. I followed the line of droplets and saw quickly it was going to the living room. Quietly placing one step after another, I made my way to the entrance of the living room. Standing outside the room, I couldn't see anything strange. I gathered myself into a ball, put my head in my hands, and waited for it to be over, yet there was screaming, then a prolonged, fleshy squelch, then nothing at all. 3 years ago, my father suffered irreversible brain damage. He found something on my lawn that's fixing him. Like any great lie, it looked like a miracle. Without a word, Dad stood up from his favourite recliner, shuffled across the carpet down the front hallway, twisted the brass knob, and set out into the dreary overcast. The screen door slammed shut behind him, punctuating his departure like a rattling exclamation point. My father hadn't done a single thing of own volition for 3 years. Not to say that his body was incapable, though then his muscles worked fine. The physical therapist I hired kept them strong. Most of his organs worked just fine too. His heart pumped an adequate amount of blood, and his stomach churned functional acid. The machinery was intact, but the part of his brain that controlled voluntary impulses had been damaged. He needed guidance and direction to perform any task. The stroke stole a lot of him, but agency was its cruelest prize. Through the foyer's bay windows, my eyes followed his lumbering movements across the yard. A dreamy mixture of bewilderment, hope, and vindication trickled down my spine. Warm honey smeared across ailing nerves, sticky and sweet. The doctors, the social workers, my brother, they'd eat their words, then I knew he'd get better. Then I watched him disappear from view, nearly obscured behind a collected heap of fallen leaves, but my heart fell through my chest. I shot up and bolted towards the yard. As my feet echoed against the hardwood, a medley of familiar admonishments paraded around my skull. Then pay attention, idiot. It'll be your fault if he's hurt out there. Who's really got the brain damage, him or you? Thoughts of him bleeding in the street kept my pace fast and frantic, but I flung the door open. The knob thudded against a nearby wall, leaving a circular indent in the plaster, but there he was. Motionless on the stoop, nose pressed gently into the mesh of the screen door, soft blue eyes vacantly fixed forward. Icy whispers of approaching winter curled over his frame, so the breeze made me shiver. I ushered my father inside and locked the deadbolt behind him. To my relief, he looked okay. No cuts on his arms, no bruises on his scalp, no visible injuries at all. W, what do you see out there, Dad? I asked, stammering. The question felt strange and delicate, rolling over my tongue like an embarrassing attempt at a foreign language, and he didn't respond. In the years since his stroke, I talked to Dad plenty. He was the only other person in the house after all, but the conversation was effectively rhetorical, and he'd never respond. Because of that, I shied away from directly asking him anything then too painful. Instead, I stuck to saying things that didn't demand a response, like remember how much Mom loved the smell of lavender, or if I can't believe how shitty the Cardinals are playing this year. The statements that acted as some peculiar medium point between talking to myself and prayer. Dad pushed past me with surprising force and returned to his recliner. That's when I noticed he was thumbing something in his pants pocket, rhythmically dragging the digit across whatever he discovered on the lawn. Once he settled, I bent over him and lightly extricated his hand from the pocket, revealing a trembling wrist with knuckles tightly clasped around a small object. I pried his fingers open, wholly unsure of what I was about to find, and it was just a leaf. A singular, unbroken leaf with 6 slender tips and an odd complexion, bright gold with specks of jet black that seemed to drift under its surface continuously, like living film grain. The more I stared, the more the pattern seemed to change, specks ebbing and flowing through a sea of shimmering gold. Entranced, I moved my fingertips to touch it. His hand snapped closed around the leaf and shot back into his pocket. His other hand grabbed my shirt collar and violently pulled my head down. I felt wet heat as he put cracked lips against my ear and rasped. A deep, steady scrape of his vocal cords, barely audible, though, like the wind dragging the tip of a tree branch against a rusty gutter while you're trying to fall asleep. It sounded like an omen. One by one, I calmly peeled his skeletal fingers from my collar, but his hands fell to his sides lifelessly. He resumed his usual afternoon activity, silently staring out the window, and I retreated to the safety of my own recliner. From across the foyer, I could tell he was still making the noise, even if I couldn't hear it, yet his Adam's apple never stopped quivering. Yet crazy as it may seem, I grinned. I'd convinced myself that, for the first time since his stroke, he was trying to speak. I didn't give Milo the good news immediately. My brother, the self-labelled realist, would require persuasion. He'd need something more meaningful than a few aberrant movements and some quiet rasping to accept he'd been wrong, and that Dad was getting better. So I watched, and I waited, confident that he'd be his old self again in no time, and miraculously, Dad didn't need prompting any more, and he'd eat of his own accord. He cleaned himself when necessary, and he knew when to sleep and woke up at the same time every day. But he still wasn't speaking, and he never let go of that leaf. Then, about a week after his impromptu resurrection, he locked himself in my second-floor guest bedroom. I wrinkle in his upward trajectory, sure, but I reasoned that once I knew it had all clicked back into place. From outside, I couldn't hear the gentle hum of the TV or the faint rustling of pages being turned. I thought the space was silent, but then I pressed my ear to the door, then the asterisk was a sound. It wasn't the rasping of his vocal cords, that it was a soft, persistent crinkle. Sounded like he was folding a sheet of cheap gift wrap into smaller and smaller squares, so hesitantly I knocked, an asterisk might have come in, Dad, asterisk no response. Once again, I pressed my ear against the door, then the crinkling had stopped. Backslash with night looming, I considered calling an ambulance. Dad had been locked in that room for 8 hours. Surely he needed to eat, I reminded him, yet drink some water and relieve himself. No matter what I said, though, he wouldn't come out. My finger hovered over the call button, but I paused. Did I really want to involve them, the police, the paramedics, maybe even the fire department, yet would they understand? Or would they be like Milo, and only see Dad as something waiting to be discarded, than a horse with a broken leg? I clicked the screen off and slid my cell phone back into my pocket, then it wasn't worth the risk. The medical system had already tried to kill him once, and I wasn't willing to give them a second shot. I looked down the hallway, estimating how much of a running start the layout would afford me, yet 25 feet, give or take, so seemed like enough. I walked to the end of the corridor, aimed my shoulder at the locked door, and began sprinting. Seconds away from collision, there was click but the door creaked ajar. Thick darkness like brackish water leaked through the slit. I skidded, sneakers squeaking, knees throbbing from the sudden shifts in momentum. My bicep kissed the old oak as I came to a stop, and the door creaked wide open. Humid air slithered over my skin, and the smell of it made me gag, but the scent was revoltingly sweet. With a hummingbird heart, I peered into the darkness. 2 small golden rings glistened in the lightless deluge. A pair of wedding bands resting at the very bottom of the Mariana Trench, then it was his eyes. Motionless and blinking, and fixed squarely on me from the back of the room. My trembling fingers crawled along the wall, searching for the light switch. Dad's golden eyes pivoted noiselessly in the darkness, yet side to side and back again, so he was shaking his head no asterisk. In a sensation akin to deja vu-esque, powerful head rush I sort of understood, and he wasn't ready to be seen, so not yet. I stepped back, grasped the knob, and pulled the door shut, then the crinkling resumed at a higher volume. Before long, something appeared at my feet, gliding under the frame and landing weightlessly on my sneaker, yet a leaf. It was like the one Dad brought in from outside, but much thinner, almost translucent, and its specks didn't drift, they were locked into place. Then, after a few seconds of crinkling, there was another, and another and another. The leaves would fall only at night, and they wouldn't remain leaves for long, then during the day they'd melt. From dawn until about noontime, the speck of gold would liquefy into a puddle of bubbling, molten amber. Then the bubbling would come, and the amber would organize, hardening into a flurry of thin, gleaming tendrils over the course of the afternoon. Each day, the leaves would fall a little farther, so when they melted down, the tendrils would become a little longer. Then that's how he grew. I wondered what would happen when his roots reached the edge of the banister, curious how he'd spread vertically. The answer was simple, his leaves were sticky. They'd hang in the space between my first and second floors overnight and crystallize come morning. You'd think all of this would have been frightening, but I didn't feel fear. No, I felt serene, though I recognized the absurdity of that feeling in retrospect. You have to understand, I swore I'd never give up on him, and now, Dad was alive and self-sufficient. My hard work, my time, my loneliness, it was all for nothing, yet hell, I'd lost weight. I'd sleep soundly, yet I was still tired all the goddamn time, yet the stress was downright crippling, so still, but it had all been worth it. and the only person who threatened that serenity, my newfound bliss, was Milo. \**, what do you mean I can't visit this month? **, he hissed, then my palms were slick with sweat. I felt the phone slipping through my hand, and because I replied, trailing off, so I stared at Dad's roots. The cascade of golden tendrils had just begun to congeal onto the floor. You can't bar me from seeing our father just because don't want me to. Guardianship doesn't mean you get to make the rules. Legally, it's my right. I bent over, inspecting the contact point between my father and the wood 50 feet below him, only half listening to Milo. Frothy, milk-coloured puddle of ooze was starting to develop. I'd witnessed the same phenomenon in the hallway upstairs, but it was much more florid in comparison. The ooze was thicker, with swirls of light pink and a scent like fermenting beer. Listen, I'm not saying you can't come. I'm saying you shouldn't come. And why the hell is that? Instinctively, I pulled a tissue from a nearby table and dabbed at the slime. The roots spasmed, and a few lurched towards me, and a myriad of slim, golden threads exploded perpendicularly from those roots, lashing the back of my hand, then stung like hellfire. A cluster of tiny crimson pinpoints appeared at the base of my thumb, dripping blood. The door to the guest bedroom shook on its hinges. The fire seemed to get much, much hotter, and it already felt like a greenhouse, despite it being November, despite the AC being off. I yanked the tissue away and mouthed the word sorry, at the roots, so hello, but... Milo's tone was becoming sharper, but I sighed, rolling my shoulders. I got a text from her number that said, "Did you lock the door?" I checked, shaking, but the hall was empty. My mom keeps texting me, but she died last year. Furthermore, I dropped the phone and ran to the hallway, but no one was there. The phone vibrated again, and a voice message started playing automatically, but it was her voice, so weak and distorted. "But see you tonight, sweetheart."